Welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Journey podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today's conversation it is very interesting. Now, you know, the body keeps the score, and a real question, like if the body keeps the score, who's holding the pen? Is it the mind or the spirit, the environment, or something we are still refusing to look at? So, listeners, in today's episode of the Mindful Journey, we are going into that messy intersection where science, lived experience, and the unseen stuff they all crash into each other. And we are talking about how the mind and spirit relate to your cells, what that means for physical health and wellness, not in just think positive way, more like what's actually happening in the body when you are stressed, you are grieving, disconnected, or spiritually grounded. Well, a quick note for all of our listeners. This episode is educational and reflective. It is not medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are dealing with symptoms or health conditions, work with a qualified clinician. And let me share today's guest's story with all of you. Now, it starts with something brutally real. His son was diagnosed with autism, and he was told there was nothing he could do. He had already lost two parents to cancer, and in that moment, he made a promise to God. If he could help his son, he would help whoever was put in front of them. We'll definitely explore this in the conversation with listeners. This promise, it turned into thousands of hours of research, high resolution microscopy, metabolic mapping, and pattern analysis. And he founded quantum research. And he now works with people from around the world who feel stuck, depleted, and confused. His work bridges advanced microscopy, metabolic science, and definitely we are going to explore the hopeful parts in there. We're also going to pressure test some claims, but then I think, if we are talking about cells and spirit, we owe it to people to stay grounded. So, listeners, please welcome my incredible guest, Stan Kurtz. Stan, welcome to the Mindful Journey, and it's really an honor to have you here.
That's great to be here, Sana. My pleasure.
Okay, Stan, I mean, before we even begin to dive deep, or kind of explore this connection of mind, spirit, and our somatic structure, very, very emotional kind of a journey in here that led you to do the research and found uh, quantum research. So if we can, share the journey with our listeners. I mean, I did like mention a bit in the introduction, but
Very well. Yeah. No, you did it very well. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Well, yeah, I didn't I believed what most people believed, growing up. And I was naturally very attracted to what was going on with my grandmother. When I was a kid, I'd always go upstairs and see her when I went to my aunt's house, and she'd have leads hooked up to her, and I loved spending my time there as opposed to what other people were doing. And then my mom, after she passed, I mean, I was like 6, and my aunt told my father, "You didn't tell him?" And I knew I could feel the dynamic of everything that was going on at such a young age. And I'm like, oh, he's in trouble. He should have told me. He's ashamed. She's mad. And this is death. And there's a death in here, and I know she's gone. There's so many moments like that where I receive so much data in a moment. And I think that's how life works too, is that we're taught through traumas, or surprises. I call them surprises. And we can register it as a trauma and grieve, but there's no production in that. So, but there's a huge learning. And I've learned that everyone's greatness and superpowers and things that they're really known for are born out of those moments. So I have been blessed with those moments including that and my mother being diagnosed with cancer. That was the hardest trauma I had to deal with. And it is absolutely my biggest blessing, because if she did not pass, I wouldn't be sitting with you. I wouldn't have this privilege and opportunity to be able to support people. And it really set me up for the next thing that happened, which was my son's diagnosis. All these things they also opened my heart like crazy. I mean, I felt it in my eyes as you're doing the introduction. There's something about being recognized and you feeling it, and then I feel it, and I'm like, it's very powerful. Our heart is so powerful. And but when my mom passed, and I saw that the system didn't quite work for her, and I can reflect on, I had those early opportunities to see that something wasn't quite right in what my heart wanted and what I was seeing. And when they told me that my son would never recover, I believed it for a period of time. And I remember that grief, which was, I'm staying in bed producing nothing. And I did go to a conference, and one scientist put up a slide that talked about high copper levels in the condition in autism. And I'm like, and that was another moment, just like that one where my grandmother died, where I could see and hear all this data, and it was kind of like, wait, what does copper have to do with a neurological condition? And then the next thing is like, wait, that's basically an illness inside the body. There's something wrong with the body. And are you saying these kids are sick and we're not doing anything because they don't speak? And that really opened up a channel for me to question everything, because I was lied to, not necessarily with intention by the person who told me. There are people with good hearts, but the data that came from them and the belief that came from them was of a discernment not to my level and my care for my child. And that I've learned that if your heart is not the heart approaching the person, then the best interests are not involved as much as, in other words, no one can care about my son more than I can or his mother can, and or we can for ourselves. And there's something that stopped us from doing that and handed our health over to things that we assumed cared that much. And when I saw that one study, I had to learn all of them, and I took 15 months to read every single study related to the biological conditions that underpinned and environmental conditions that underpin that condition. But what it turned out is I didn't learn how to recover my son. I did. That was a thing. Like, he's 25 today, and there's no remnants of it that I can see or am aware of. We don't know what he would have been if he would have not gone through that process. But he's amazing, and he's top level in his field. What I learned was, it wasn't it wasn't a learning about autism, it was a learning about humans, and that everyone has a version of this that we find when we look at their blood, when we look at the biology. And that's what sort of brought me down this path. And each step I kept having these wow moments of, holy cow, like, our water has these entities in the water that I find in people that are causing harm. The water is poisoned. That's a shocking thing. And so many pieces of evidence like that over time, and that we research that every day, and we're in front of people every day, and I learn every day, and we are doing remarkable things every day. And you said several things in the introduction about how the mind is involved, and how like stress and trauma, all of it's related. Because if you're in fight or flight, you are more susceptible to these things growing in your body compared to you passing them and clearing them. So trauma, I've learned, is absolutely involved. In fact, the mind and the body look at trauma as the most urgent thing to take care of. It's like equivalent to you being chased by a tiger. You might be upset about I was upset about my mom's passing for a long time. I was literally, the body was reacting as if I'm being chased by a tiger, because I'm holding it. And because of that, I had many conditions. I had irritable bowel. I had ADHD. I had what people will call ADHD. I had trouble visual processing. I couldn't look and read and speak and recall at the same time. I had all these dysregulations that were probably born out of infections that I was passed on, and stuck trauma. And through these processes of recovering myself, recovering my son from this condition, and then I had a preschool, and I accidentally learned that it's not autism. All the kids were doing better when we started doing the food plan in a way that was based on science, not based on what the state wanted. And then that
Mm.
just kept leading me to the next thing and the next thing, and the types of things that we work on, I don't even care who comes in. Like, I don't ask what people have. If it's like you want something, if you're looking, you're searching for answers, you come in, walk in the door, and we get started. So that's kind of how it is today, and I'm very blessed and privileged to be doing work that I have not seen anywhere, and we're getting results that I haven't seen anywhere. And we can talk more in detail, and I can show you some examples, but you only asked one question, so I'm going to try to pace myself and allow you to speak again.
No, no, no. I mean, one thing which I could, internally feel here is, um, often, as every person, I mean, life is unpredictable. We cannot discount for the fact that yes, it can be hard to face the reality, because of course there is definitely darkness out there, but then to cut through that darkness there is also light. It may take some time, but as you mentioned, that grieving, after your mother passed, was something kind of, a push for you to embark upon this path. And I think sometimes life really gives us those moments or situations that are super, super questionable. I mean, we often kind of get stuck by asking why, God, why you are doing this to me? Why exactly? But
Okay. Yeah.
and we kind of often get stuck in blaming any person or any situation or any system, but then how we can move forward, I
Great
think that is
question.
something. Yeah,
I
that's
love the
some.
question. I love the question. So, I'll approach it a couple different ways. I have literally, because I'm a very logical person, like I love logic, I love data. So I've written down everything that could be considered a trauma. Like, I
Okay.
created a library of all traumas, and it's only 240 things, which is pretty interesting. So in other words, grief is one. So I'm pretty good with grief because I went through it, right? Betrayal, you'd say, is another. Somebody that stabbed you in your back, friend that talked behind your back, whatever it happens to be. So there are 240 lessons that are set up in this entire universe. That's it. That also tells me it's a creation. It's not something you have unlimited forms of light, unlimited forms of energy and color, unlimited experiences. Why is there only 240 lessons in life? It's because this is a manufactured place. There's no question it's intentional. Now, if that's the case, then what is it here for? Well, because we can both talk about grief. We can both talk about these things. It gives us a common context to interact with each other. But we are we're 7 billion beings. So we have 7 billion instances of a created being that's slightly different, but yet the same, that gets 240 different things. That's a science experiment, if you ask me. And how we deal with it will be our value while we're here. So I didn't used to think like this, but I used to, oh well, my friends didn't, their mom didn't die. Now I'm like, I was blessed because it woke me up early. I got the college education early. When I was 15, I got the PhD. So how you transform it is basically this. If you take things out of context, like if you lose somebody, in 20 years, you're going to figure out how to deal with it. You will have moved on. That's just reality. But why wait 20 years? So what you can look at, and I've studied this, sorry about that, masters, they have had rough times. And in fact, it's almost required. So what I've learned is sometimes the larger the trauma, something we call the trauma, I also call it a gift, or you can say a surprise. The larger the surprise, the more awakening you can get from it. And if I've been through grief, and that I've lost my mother, and you lose yours, I happen to be an easy resource for you to talk to because I've been through it. So it's like I get a key that can help open my friend so that we can have a common ground. If I didn't and I say, "Oh, you just need to work through this," or you're not going to listen to me because I don't have that experience. So experience gives you keys to be able to support the next human being. So, but if you're in it, it's very hard to understand that. So
Yeah.
what I tell people, and often I'll jump right into it, is like, how could this possibly be a good thing? How could losing that dream job of yours be a good thing? And that process of thinking about how, because there's 1,000 solutions in any situation. In fight or flight, there's only two: stay, go, complain or whatever. But there's 1,000 answers to anything. So inquiry of how can this be the best thing that ever happened to you, and sitting in that and journaling in the possibilities. Because I have been in the situation where I lost my dream job and I was pretty suicidal over it. It turned out to be awesome. So the reminder of everything could be awesome. And I mean everything. I've worked with so many people that have been abused, raped. I had a man recently with 5 heart attacks. I'll show you his blood. He was stolen at birth. He's a Native American, stolen at birth, and then put into an orphanage, and experiments ran on him. You know what he turned out to be? He is a Native American teacher because he was saved by an elder that taught him Native American ways. And those ways helped him find a purpose and live in his heart and stop his violence and drugs. And now that guy's a master. And
Mm-hmm.
Rumi said that a prophet's soul is especially afflicted because it needs to become so large. And that's my experience, is that the biggest engines need the biggest starters, and how we navigate through our 240 things that happen to us will determine whether or not our value and purpose are greater. So everyone that has something negative happen to them, there is an equal and opposite reward in it if you're willing to see it. And it's okay to grieve, but you know what I've learned about my mom? Grieving is optional, and it doesn't produce anything. I love my mom. I talk about her almost every day. She's right there all the time. I keep her with me, along with my dad and my younger self that had the pain. I have them all here. I honor them. They're my partners in what I'm doing every day. So you can love and not necessarily, grieving is optional. Love is pretty constant. So though I'm giving you some examples, but really, and I have a process about this, which is really, it starts off, what's the thing that shouldn't have happened? And
Mm-hmm.
then from that is, how did your body respond when you believe it shouldn't have happened? And then in the end, it's going to be questions like, how did this benefit you in the end? How could this benefit you? And then from there, what gifts could happen from this? And it's really an exploration of honoring how you felt at the time, but also realizing there's a major cost. When somebody goes into stress and fight or flight, I can see it in their blood. Like, we can sit down and you're calm, and then when you go into a crisis and fight or flight, and I take another drop, it'll look like cancer, like instant. And then if we talk through it, and you start to realize that there could be gifts in it, and that God potentially is in all things, including this. Because if we're fight or flight, we don't believe God is in the situation we're in. You know, we're not like, oh, thank you, God, for killing off my mom with cancer. It's a little hard to do that. But today I honor that path because it activated me. I honor that path because I became a better father. I honor that path because I have tools that I wouldn't have had without it. And it's not like I'm endorsing her death. I'm not, but I'm honoring of what it gave to me. And if I want to honor every gift given to me. It doesn't matter if it's smelly at first, but if it turned into something that's value for me, we become ungrateful typically, where you go, well, that was horrible what my father did, or what my father-in-law or stepfather or stepmother did, but I conquered, afterwards. And it's like, well, actually, if they didn't do what you did, you may not have gotten the gift. And that's more honoring, and I feel more in my heart when I recognize that all things have benefited me. And anytime it didn't was just because I was kind of being stubborn in trying to get the past to change. Instead, anything that you do to me, I'm going to navigate for good. That's my job. And then I don't have to be afraid of any human because I'm going to navigate it for good, no matter what they do to me. So I don't sit around trying to stop things from happening. I sit inside my heart and I go, what is it I want to do today? What's my purpose? What am I moving towards? And I make decisions based on that. And life gets way easier. I didn't realize it, but life is way easy, super easy. I have a shirt that says, if it isn't easy, it isn't true. And I often wear that. And anyway, so that's my answer to that.
But I mean, it's definitely going to sound a bit weird, and maybe many of our listeners wouldn't agree, because it would sound to them that,
Dishonoring.
completely, yeah, dishonoring or discounting
I see it.
the fact that. Mhm. Hey, listeners, if you are enjoying the mindful journey, take 2 seconds to follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. It helps the show reach more people who need a softer, steadier space to land. And if you can leave a quick review, it seriously make a difference. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
I don't see it that way. I understand it can look that way. I don't dishonor my mother's death. I actually honor my mother's death because I know she wouldn't want me to be hurt. She would want me to make it the best possible thing ever. And in the moment, it's like, listen, I was pissed off after my mother's funeral that people sat and ate lunch afterwards because I'm like, how can anyone eat with this? So I understand the mind that is in stress and pain, and that's okay. I honor that too. But you are asking, how do you move past it? I understand. We all have life going on around us. Yeah, so no, I appreciate where you're coming from because people may see this and think I'm being dishonoring. I don't sit there when somebody says, "Oh, I have cancer." I don't say, "Hey, great, this is going to be an awesome thing for you." That would be dishonoring in the moment. I'm all up for the challenge of helping people become the best they can be, but I also know God's in all things. So no matter what happens, there is a positive way to navigate. And if you notice that if you are in depression, if you are fighting reality, what are you getting done? How are you getting your purpose taken care of? It's taken me time to learn this. And I also have a certain evolution because of it. And I know everyone has their own evolution. So when somebody comes in, I know they're in trauma. I know they have stuff going on. So I honor them at that level, but I'm always kind of like trying to have them realize the next thing, not all at once, but help them move towards becoming the best that they can be in that moment, both from a mindset, spiritual perspective, but also in the blood, which I'd like to show you some of that when you're ready. But go ahead and ask me the next question. And I don't know how we are in timing, so I'm leaving that to you because I definitely want to show you some blood stuff.
And definitely, we will get immediately to that. But before that, just a
Yeah.
quick kind of thought. And this is something I initially did not believe, but now with the experiences and past years and everything, I absolutely believe this. And this is something that I tend to keep on consistently sharing with my family members, my parents, my siblings, that in order to sometimes learn something, we have to go through the toughest times. And it's fine. I mean, of course it's negative, but then if we can look at the positive side as well, I think we'll definitely say, what you are saying here, Stan, that, because of that, you had to, I mean, this is how you discovered your purpose. You got your purpose. So absolutely.
I could not agree with that more. I think that it's nobody tells us that that's how it works here, but I've realized how it works here is that in order to get people, I'll say it this way, the people that have gotten the greatest accomplishments and gifts really were it was born in challenge. And I think we enjoy picking flowers, but we're not getting a life purpose out of it, although some people might. I don't want to disregard that, but it's like I'm just using it as an illustration. It's like I could pick flowers all day. I don't remember those life events as a child. The ones that I remember are the ones that had impact on me and I had to navigate into something. When I felt like I didn't have a purpose and I found a computer one day accidentally and sat down, that was a very impactful moment. And,
Yeah.
these impactful moments are steps that we can push off of to build. And many masters talk about many situations that were challenging that created incredibly positive things. And that's what I like to teach is I like to inventory what are those things that shouldn't have happened and show people the connections to the things that they're famous for in their friend circle. Your compassion, your patience, your disbelieving structure. I mean, I'm thinking about myself. Like, I was never good in structure after what happened as a child. Now, you can
Mm,
call that a trauma, but I also call it's a wake up to structure doesn't necessarily mean true. I have to find out for myself. So that made me very independent, maybe even stubborn, but it is also a beautiful gift of mine that I have to discern for myself before I move forward. I have to discern for myself before I even make a recommendation to you. You know how many people make recommendations because they're excited or that somebody else was excited? I watch it. Somebody says, "What do you think of this?" And it's a brochure. I'm like, "Well, here's what I can see. A tree was killed. This is what I know. Somebody hired a very good graphic designer. The name sounds interesting. That's what I know because there's no other sign. There's no evidence in testimony, nothing I can look at. You know, it's like that's what I see as fact. I've learned how to do that and how to discern information with somebody that's excited because of the things that happened to me as a child, where I had to learn skills because the thing that happened I didn't like at that moment. But that's how I ended up learning. There is a universal education that is available to all of us through the things that we're surprised about. And I see it time and again. Once you do see this, it is literally like the Matrix, and you're like, okay, bring on the next thing. Like I say frequently now, I'm ready for the next learning. And because I know that I get more power to be able to support the next human being, which I feel is my purpose, is to take care of the person in front of me. And it's going to happen by surprise. It's going to happen by neighbors attacking. It's going to happen by something that I'm not used to at first, and then I learn from there, and I love learning now. I love surprise. I love troubleshooting. I love figuring out a solution to things that other people might get, kicked in the gut over. It's because I know that each level helps me do my purpose better, helps me help the next human being. And this is unusual, maybe. I don't know. I think this is natural, but I know
mm,
people that will call it aren't necessarily in that vibe yet. Some people haven't, you know, jogged long distances, and it sounds crazy, but I can tell you that this one's worth learning because I'm very blessed to say at this point in my life, I have more joy, I have more calmness than ever, and yet I'm accomplishing things that I thought I never could. And it really happened through the processing of the surprises that life threw our way.
absolutely. That is so good to know. So good to know. And of course, Stan, please let's get started with
I'm going to show you. Let me show you some slides. So in our work, we're looking at over time, I started getting into the examination of cells. This was that gentleman I said that was stolen at birth.
what
Yeah, from a hospital in Canada. He was Native American. His name is Standing Bear. His native name. This is not how blood's supposed to look. All the cells are clumped up and they're brown. They're supposed to be clear. Brown is in this microscope, which can show energy. Inflammation is shown as red or brown. This is very advanced inflammation. These white things in the center are what we find in water structures they seem to be almost a technology that steals stem cells and creates illness in the red blood cells. So this is how he came in. He had 5 heart attacks prior to being there, and he had a seizure basically when we met when he got here. And a few days later, that's what he ended up with. And he had high sugar levels, and he walked away without that. So doing much better. And all these, slides I'm showing you, we also have videos that are testimonies from the people, so you can actually see their faces and how they explain this. This was a long time ago. This was one of my original inventions back in 2006. And this is a nasal spray that we use to help regulate the brain by giving the brain metabolites that the blood's having trouble getting to the brain for multiple reasons. There's good bacteria's missing, and there's cellular and other interferences in the body. But this is it's an EEG scan, and what you're looking at is what the brain looks like. The green is normal, yellow is double the slow activity, red is triple the slow activity. So the front of the brain does not equal how the center of the back look. And then this area should be normal. So this is one spray of one metabolite. And we consistently were changing the brain from dysregulated to regulated, literally within such 60 seconds. And the Northeastern University said about this is a long time ago, but said that this area of research in brain activity, I'm just translating to make it simple, may represent a breakthrough in not only understanding and treating ADHD, and we don't treat anything, we just help people get better in their life, as your introduction says too. But it says, but this work also is helping understand the molecular origins of human attention. So in other words, we're playing with the ability for you to be able to see consciousness. And that's one area that was 18, maybe 17, 16 years ago. So this is the before and after, and that's just one spray. I have that video, even though it's 18 years ago, that video is on our website. You can actually see the scan, the doctor, that we conducted this with. This is a nurse who came in with what she described when she saw the cells. She says, "This looks like leukemia to me. I don't diagnose anything. I don't treat anything, but I just help people along and get their best conscious awareness to themselves." And so this is how she came in. Everything on the screen except the white circles on the bottom right is a cellular interference that is potentially killing off those white circles. But that it's supposed to be filled with white circles. Instead, we have all this other junk in it. She had trouble walking upstairs. She had fatigue. She described herself as having what she thought was long COVID, whatever that is, by the way. So that was before, and this is just a couple days later. And she said, "I'm more clear than I've ever been in my life." So that's from one to the other. This is Karen. She was 76 years old. She had um, gone through the typical sort of process of the vaccine schedule and things like that. I'm not saying that's associated to this or not. This is just data points. But she had a history of Alzheimer's in her family. Her mother died of it. And she was afraid that she would too, because during that process of COVID, she had Alzheimer's symptoms. She was diagnosed as having it. I don't know how they do that, but I think it's symptomatically. But she had memory issues and she had anxieties. Her white blood cells actually in her blood. This is a white blood cell that's black, and this is another one that's silver that looks like a moon. And this is not how they're supposed to look. This is another one that was black. But the indicator here that I see in some of these folks that have this type of symptom is their cells stack so deeply on top of each other, they look like pea pods. And that's not how it's supposed to be. Even when they're stacked, they generally look like pillows. Here, they look so smushed. And her symptom was she had memory issues. She was agoraphobic, didn't want to go outside. This is her the following day. Hang on. There. Uh, this is her blood the following day. And this is over a year ago, and she's not had any of those symptoms since. From her point of view, she's traveled, she's painting, and she looks like this when she's traveling. Like she is a young heart that is out and about. So this is Kevin, who formerly was diagnosed with prostate cancer, not by me. This is just his sharing. And he came in after radiation, and he was fine. He was coming in and asking questions about his son, saying he's fine. We took a look at a drop of his blood. This is what he saw. But he mentioned, "I have a lot of anxiety, worry, and at night I pee a lot, but I also have trouble peeing." And I said, "Okay, interesting." So this was 4 hours later with methods that we use in research here. And then he said, basically, "I didn't realize I could feel so good." And then he went back to normal peeing. And a year later, I saw him at a conference in Palm Springs, and he said, "I'm still feeling great." This is a boy, a 16-year-old that was diagnosed with autism, not by me, but had that diagnosis. He was irritable. He was dysregulated. He was in a lot of discomfort, and he was very impatient. And his conversation was not focused in context with the room. It was just whatever he was thinking. And this is what his blood looked like. It looks like a beehive or a rug. That's not this is really beyond most things we see. It was probably some of the most dense red blood cells I'd ever seen. And then this was 4 hours later in the afternoon. And he was comfortable. There's a testimonial video of him talking about how he feels so different and so clear, and that he called the work heroic, which was crazy. And his mom's crying over it. It was really beautiful. But his mom reports that he basically became a man that day. He went from being a boy to a dysregulated boy to a man. I'm gonna show you maybe one more. Well, we also have lasers. This is a physical therapist, a doctor who had an issue with his hand where he was lifting and he sprained his hand with these lasers that he was using on himself. Within a few minutes, that pain went from a 5 to a 1, and he was, as you can see in his in his facial expression, quite surprised because he's a skeptic, coming into it. And we have many lasers like that we use. This is something, and I'll kind of maybe end with this. What we're finding is this is what a stem cell looks like. The more stem cells we find, the more of these sort of entities we see in the water, but also see in the blood. And the person that has the most stem cells is more susceptible to have these things in their blood. Some people would identify this as parasites. I look at it as some intentional technology because nature does not, the body does not respond to these things. In other words, the immune system goes right by it while we're watching. They look stealth to the body is what is my estimation. And these also seem to program the cells to get into that mode that we saw earlier with that nurse. So we've learned how to get rid of these very quickly, just in a few days. And people can have can have 14, 15, 20 million of these things inside their blood. And we've learned how to manage these and get rid of them, but also put a product in the water that prevents that from happening again. This is another up close view of the stem cells that this thing seems to take, and the energy that comes off of these. They are glowing more than anything else in the blood. This energy is being stolen by, from the human by these things. So this is another way people are not at their best with these things, being on board. So, and this is an example of finding it in water. This is water from a children-based theme park, from a restaurant. We had somebody go there and bring us the water from it, and this is what we found. The same things we're finding in the water. So these things are being taken in just by drinking water. And this is a way that people are, in our view, so far, our theory is that drinking water, which you need to do, but is actually being infested with these things. It's like it's interesting. And all these structures are not supposed to be in the water. These seem to be like eggs that this thing creates to create more of them. And it's shocking to see this in the water, but we find this in every water, bottled water that we've ever found so far. Any sample, even surgical saline, has some of these in it. Some's better, some's not. But it's a thing, and we've developed a way to prevent this by putting some drops in water that can kill this stuff off before it gets in. This is an example of something that came out during a colonic. It looks like the same type of creature developed into a GI thing. We don't know for sure, but the people that see this come out are like, that looks exactly like a grown-up version of what we're seeing in the blood. These are some examples of people pre and post. This is a 12-year-old that had 12 rounds chemo, 17 rounds of radiation, and was deemed cancer-free and doing well. But mom said there's something wrong. This is what we saw on the left when he got here. That's one of those parasites stuck with lots of stem cells or entities or whatever you want to call it. Again, I don't want to use Western terms or say I know anything. I don't. But these structures that we see in the water and the cells, and this is 3.5 days later. This is what he looked like on the left when he got here, and this is what he looked like 3.5 days later. And his personality was completely different. As the blood changes, so does the capacity of the person, so does their personality, and in my experience, so does their held traumas. So this is another photo comparison pre and post. The dates are on it, September 4th to literally September 5th, and this is the person pre and post. And we do this to show it really makes an incredible difference. This is another one where there's all this interference in the blood that does not look normal, and another one of these structures, and this is post, and those blue little happy faces are immune cells. That was her to begin with, and that was her at the end. And I'll do one more on the left. Again, blood that looks really, really bad, and then that was November 29th. December 1st is the one on the right. This is the person pre and post. You can, and their report of how they felt, we've got videos for each one where you can see them say, it's been life-changing. So anyway, there's a little link to how people can find out more about us, but Stan's Recovery is a great place to watch 200 or so recovery videos of people that are reporting what happened. Stan's Links is a good place to go. I do have like talks I do from time to time, and I just publish stuff for free so people can, get to know this work. You can actually visit these slides by going stanslides.com. So I make it easy with these links. So that's a good there's one thing that I'll share. This is a 2-minute video if it's okay. This is I don't know if you know who the band AC/DC is. Does
I know.
Really? Okay. So this has the bass player from AC/DC. This nurse was disabled for 12 years from anxiety, and we've got a couple other people in it, and it's just 2 minutes, and they explain what happened when they got here. To make sure that if you can hear this when I hit play, give me a thumbs up so that I know I'm not wasting anybody's time.
Was this experience like for you? And then have you busy to a point where you have zero light? Because that's how much I would recommend coming here. My energy levels was skyrocketed. I feel clear. I do breath work. I just extended my breath holds over a minute. Exponentially, my health and overall well-being, my brain feels clear. Everything's just 100% up. Well, I had to be dragged here. Exceedingly skeptic. It's probably the best thing I've done. I've never been so quiet in my head. My focus and ability is like I've never had it in my entire life. And I didn't realize how much I was being lied to about anything. Anyhow, any reservations, put them aside. Come through, it'll change your life. Promise you.
The past many years has been chronic anxiety, which has been 100% curriculum, like 24/7. I've tried medications, I've tried supplements, I've tried every modality you can think of. And it's taken, I think maybe even on the first day, my anxiety level went from 10 down to a 4. And this is the calmest hold I was felt in since I can remember.
Is it in the top 5 best things you've ever done? Number 1.
I think one of the best things. I've been trying to lose this stubborn belly thing for like ever, and I work on it, and I can't breathe without. And I lost 10 pounds since I've been here, and I didn't do anything other than just follow the plan. So, like, that's wild.
3.5 days.
I'm gonna be sexist.
And you also lost a little weight.
15 pounds.
15 pounds.
This is better than my kids.
So?
This is the number one most beneficial thing I've ever done. I've done a lot of spiritual journey, a lot of spiritual exploration, and this is number one.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
It is crazy. And and you even said before something like on that, that people, like when we talk about a lot of this or we show it, it looks crazy. And people describe it as miraculous and miracles. And I'm not a miracle expert, so I can't say. A lot of people say lots of things. And all I can say is it is a deep, deep privilege to be doing things that people said were impossible. And I did it for my son, and that gave me a window of belief that there is much more possibility and that humans are way more capable than we've been told. And I get to spend my days researching what a true unleashed human has the capability of doing. And that's what I get to do every day. And I tell people, like, the biggest thing that I get, I want to help people in a way that doesn't make them addicted to me, doesn't make them need to come back. I want people to be unleashed, to be individually powered and hitting their purpose and their potential. And I'd be happy to just, take on the karma of the karmic value of helping people get to that place. I'm here if they need them, but often people are just, boo.
And do you get pushbacks from, because this is something that may kind of shake up the conventional medicine industry, or like the pharma industry, or maybe the entire kind of the system where we humans would need quick fixes, and if anything is not working, then we have to keep on spending more and more money in the insurance, and then all that loop. Do you get pushbacks?
Well, the way I move is,
Mm.
I feel like, well, first off, Western medicine has its place. Someone will say, uh, are you trying to practice medicine? No, I'm not doing any of that. Like there's no medicine here. There's no diagnosis here. I'm standing for research that looks at what is the best possible outcomes for humans in how they feel and how they think and what their performance potential is. We have Olympic athletes that come in, we've got coaches, we have people in the worst conditions, and we've got the people looking for the best performance, CEOs. And the world is full of 7 billion people that aren't at their full potential for the most part. And we are searching for answers as a human race. And so I'm not out there trying to say anything is bad. I have a Western medicine friend, physician, that I want to be able to rely on. And if I fell down and broke a bone and needed a surgery, I'm going to the hospital. But I understand why they're there and what they're good at. And I have learned over time that there are things that, like a Western medicine doc he's not trained in nutrition. He's not trained in vitamins. He's not trained actually to even discern new science. I've learned that in my experience, but they're good-hearted people and they have value. But I've just learned that I'm responsible for myself, and I'm responsible to do what I can for my brothers and sisters, and in forms of trauma, in forms of, healthy living. And I just stay in my lane, and I respect the other lane, and I don't need to push on them. Therefore, pushback is like, I'm just staying in my lane, and I don't need to change anything over there. I don't need to change them. But to my sister in front of me, I want to do what I can in service of you. And that's all I can really stand for. And I have to stand for, I don't have to, but I'm here to stand for truth and what's best for people. And if you really want to get into it, yeah, there are forces maybe that wouldn't like that. But that's not my business. People ask me, like, are you concerned for, I have friends, if you really want to get in, I have friends that aren't here, that people that I've met throughout the years that have been disappeared in one way or the other. And people ask me, like, are you ever concerned about that? And I'm like, I'm going to stay in my lane. And I'm also going to trust that I'm here for a purpose that I'm not afraid of. And if something were to happen to me, that's not my business either. My business is whether or not I'm going to be in service to you, or am I going to just turn my back and put my arm around, my son and not do anything for the rest of the world, because I know how alone I was when I got that diagnosis. I know what it feels like to hear there's no hope and that you're going to live a hard life. I remember the pain of that. And I wanted someone there that told me, there's something else. And I don't want that for my brothers and sisters. And when I look around and I see how many people aren't well, how could I not do what I can? How I don't understand how people aren't doing that more and doing it with discernment and with seeking the truth and doing it with the idea that God's in all things. And I don't mean it in a religious way. You could say the universe or whatever. I have my own beliefs. I didn't grow up that way, and I never thought I'd be like that. But the evidence points in that direction. So I appreciate the question, and I'm very respectful of this question. But I don't live in fear. At the same time, I'm not looking to stoke fires. You know, people have their evolution. People are using tools the way the best that they can. I'm making one available that's coming through me. And it doesn't need to change the entire world. If it does, it does. That's not my business. But I'm going to hold that space and that light and be responsible for that as best as possible. And I will let, God, the universe, my brothers and sisters take care of the rest. That's all I can do for the sake of my own joy and happiness and being in line with my heart and the wisdom that comes through me. It's the best way I can kind of describe it for now. I'll probably describe it 100 different ways. but I think that's probably enough for you to understand the motive of why to do it is empathy for and love for humans. And I really feel that I've connected in a big way to care about everyone the same way that I would have approached my son. And I really live that every day. I have fallen in love with the human race, and I feel obligated in a way to do what I can for all of the brothers and sisters. And I feel like the more of us that do that and spend time doing that, the better chance we have for our real evolution, not to have it hijacked and not to have it cut short.
Exactly. Exactly. Amazing, amazing. Listeners, I'll have all the details in the show notes so that you can reach out to Stan and explore more around quantum research. And thank you so much once again, Stan. This was such an illuminating and very, very grounding conversation. And with this, listeners, we conclude this episode of the Mindful Journey. Until next time, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana.